So I want to know, what is your favorite thing about the SQ?
I love the flexibility of it. I think it's a really powerful piece of kit. That's true of most digital consoles, but I think there's a few things that the SQ brings that just really enable you to do a lot in terms of flexibility and how you want to route audio and that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Let's get real. Like, what's the top thing that needs to be improved about the SQ? Just the thing you're like, why did they do it this way?
the thing that I come up against most, I guess, is the number of bus. It's got 12 bus, so it's pretty good, and you can break those up into auxes or groups as you want. But that's the one limit that I guess I hit most often is, particularly these days, most people wanting in-ear monitor mixes. If you're doing in-ear monitors for a full band, plus say a live stream mix, plus then you want to have some groups to be able to do some group mixing, you can quickly run out of bus on there. So maybe if they could up that to 16 bus, that would be quite helpful.
So do you have to use one of those or several of those 12 buses for your effects as well, or do they have separate effects?
No, so they do have 4 independent effects bus. So the way it works is with the effects, you get 8 effects units, but there's 4 effects bus. So you can use 4 of them on a bus. And then the final 4, you then have to be a bit more creative as to how you use those. So I then would insert them either directly inserted onto a channel. So if you want like a snare verb, you could stick a snare verb directly on an insert onto a channel. Or if you want to have something like just a general instrument verb, you could stick that on a group and then route all your instruments through that group to get the verb through the group, something like that. You just have to sort of think outside the box a little bit to get those last 4 used.
Yeah, so really it's compared to the X32, same amount of buses then, because I mean, the X32 has 16 buses, but 4 of those are used for effects. So on the SQ, are the buses stereo, or do you have to use 2 linked together to get a stereo bus?
Yeah, no, they can be either mono or stereo. You don't lose any bus by making them stereo. So yeah, you can have 12 stereo bus. At least I'm assuming you can run all 12. I don't know if I've actually ever tried running all 12 in stereo, but they're all, you can go through and select which ones you want to be mono and stereo. I've never hit any limits on that, so I'm pretty sure you can run all of them in stereo if you wanted to.
X32, you have to link 2 buses together if you want a stereo bus. Right. So if somebody wants a stereo in-ear mix, then you're tying up 2 buses to do that. Whereas on the SQ, you only have to use 1.
Then the physical I/O becomes the issue, because then you've got 12 stereo bus. If you're going to take all of those as outputs, you need 24 outputs on your stage box to be able to run all of those. So your physical I/O then can become the issue. But yeah, you could run 12 stereo bus, and if you had a big enough stage box or enough stage boxes linked together, you could get 12 stereo bus with 24 outputs on stage if you wanted to.
You know, the thing that I hate about the X32, and I've been using it for like a decade now, and I still hate this about it, is routing. For a mixer that's so user-friendly, it's like you get into the routing screens, you're like, what is going on here, and how do I get this done? So I'm just curious, on the SQ, is it the same kind of headache, or have they really simplified?
With the SQ, it's a lot more flexible. So you can route anything to anything. There are very few limits really in terms of what you can route and how you do that. There's a number of ways that you can do that, but it's very flexible in that regard.
Yeah, on the version 4 firmware with the X32, they made it to where you can do one-to-one routing, which you can like route different things to different channels instead of having those blocked. But there are still like 8 different routing screens on the X32. And that's what, like, especially for a church volunteer, it's like to wrap your mind around what's going on there and what you do and where you do it. It's just like, I don't know why they had to make it so difficult. And you can see behind me, I have the QU mixer, which is another Allen and Heath product, which is kind of like the baby of the SQ, right? Or it came before the SQ. I just created a mastery course for the QU mixer, and I was just very pleased with how simple the routing is. I love that it's just simple. Like if you're going to use local routing, like plug it right into the mixer, it's just 1-to-1. Whatever you plug into one goes to channel 1. And like you can't change that. Which, I mean, I guess that ruins your flexibility, but if you need flexibility, you can use a stage box, because then you have the 1-to-1 routing if you're using a stage box. So I love how Allen and Heath did that, because it's a whole lot simpler than the X32.
That can also then become a limitation if you wanted to do anything more complex with it. I would say the SQ takes a lot of the simplicity of the QU, but expands it in terms of that flexibility. So you get the simplicity, but you also get the more advanced features, and you can do a lot more of the routing with it. So you get a really nice matrix grid of inputs and outputs, and you can select which inputs and outputs go to where. But the other thing you can also do is, if you look at your preamp settings, you can also decide in the preamp where your input is going to come from as well, which again is a nice little feature. So there's kind of two ways that you can route from there. But yeah, it's still super simple.
Yeah, I just want to mention that although we just talked about the QU, and I just created a course for the QU, I don't think that it's necessarily something that I'd recommend going out and buying this day and age. The reason I created the course is because a lot of people have the QU out there because they've already purchased it. They need some training for their volunteers and things like that. But if you're going out and you're buying a new mixer, definitely go for the SQ, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. For me, I think the one thing that the QU does really well is it's a really nice transition from analog to digital. But I think the downside is you quite quickly hit the limitations of the QU. So it's kind of an easy transition, but I think you outgrow it fairly quickly.
So you've used both the X32 and SQ. Of course, you've used the SQ a whole lot more. But what makes you thankful that you get back to the SQ?
For me, it's the touchscreen.
Oh, yes.
That for me is the one thing on the X32 that I just find just frustrating. So often, actually, if I'm using an X32, I will use it with the app, and I'll put it on the network and then control it with the app, just because it then gives me the touchscreen, and I can do a lot of things with the touchscreen that intuitively I want to be able to just tap on something and control it.
What about audio quality? Were you able to hear a difference between how the Behringer X32 sounded versus the SQ?
So I've never put the two side by side. I think that would probably be the only way you would really hear that. I think both of them sound great. I don't have any issues with the audio quality on an X32. I think it's a great sounding mixer. The SQ is a 96K sample rate. So it technically is a slightly higher sample rate, but you're going to need to have very high quality amps and speakers and stuff to be able to hear that. I think most people are not really going to notice that difference. Then I think the difference wouldn't necessarily be in quality. I think it would just be in sort of a slightly different flavor. But yeah, I can't say that I've noticed a big difference between the two in audio quality. So
if somebody were thinking about upgrading to a new mixer, let's say they have the X32 right now and they're like, we're ready to move on to something different. Is the SQ what you would recommend, or would you recommend something else?
I think it depends as to why you want to upgrade, because I think the X32 and the SQ would be very similar in terms of channel counts and outputs and that sort of stuff. So if you've outgrown the X32 and you find you need more inputs or something like that, then you probably want to look at something like the Avantis, which would be the big brother to the SQ.
If you're looking like to take the next step from the X32, go for like Avantis, or maybe look at the Behringer Wing, or which would be a whole nother discussion, right? Because that's the next caliber of mixer. But say I'm a new church and I'm just looking like I need something along the lines of X32, SQ. I mean, I could probably guess that you would probably recommend that somebody just go ahead and get the SQ.
Yeah, I probably would, but I think that's more because I'm used to the Allen and Heath world. And for me, I know the Allen and Heath desks, and to jump on an Allen and Heath desk is just makes sense to me. If you've come from, even if you've come from something like an X-Air or something like that, the little Behringer desks, and you want something that's in the Behringer family of mixers, then it might well make sense to go X-Air, X32, and then Wing, and that kind of progression might be a more sensible route for you.
Choose a platform, right, and stick with it, because you have volunteers, and if you threw a new mixer at them, that's like taking somebody from a Mac computer to a PC. It's like there's a learning curve, right? Even though you're doing all the same things, there's just some slight differences between the two that you have to wrap your head around, and maybe volunteers are already having a hard time to begin with. So it's like you don't want to throw an extra layer of complication. Just say we want to switch from Behringer X32 to the Allen and Heath QU, whatever. It's like, probably not a good idea. Of course, there's all kinds of things that play into this, right? But I think this discussion will really help people to choose like what's the best path forward. Now, one thing that comes to mind for me is I think there's a lot more support, especially on YouTube, for the X32 than the SQ at this point, just because it has a bigger user base and it's been around for longer. I think that'll change in the coming years as more people. I hear a lot more people talking about Allen and Heath. They're kind of jumping off of the Behringer train, which I really have nothing strongly against the X32, other than routing being hard to figure out. But I have a course to help you with that, help simplify it as much as can be. But I love this discussion. I think that there's a good chance I might switch to an Allen and Heath guy. I don't know. It's still to be determined. I've had my time on the QU now, and then my next one I'm going to get my hands on is the SQ, which I'm looking forward to that. And then I hear a lot of people talking about Avantis, so I want to get my hands on that as well. And I just love that we have so many great choices. But any parting words for somebody who's trying to choose the right mixer?
There's so many factors that go into this. I think it depends, like we've said, channel count, outputs, all that kind of stuff. If you're wanting to run stereo monitors or something like that, then maybe something like the SQ might have a slight advantage there. But I think generally speaking, the X32 and the SQ are going to be pretty similarly matched in terms of their specs most of the way through. I think what would be far more helpful is to just say, what are you familiar with? What have you come from? What do you know? What's going to be an easy transition for you? And again, loads of options there for you. There's loads of ways that you could be coming. You could be coming from another digital desk. You could be coming from an analog desk. There's just so many possibilities. But I think if you know something and if you're comfortable with it, then stick with it. There's no point in changing it. Don't mix it up. Go with what you know.
Very good. Practical advice. Thanks so much for joining me in this video. Ben, why don't you let people know how they can get connected with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Plugged In Audio Visual is the company that I run here in the UK, and I've got a YouTube channel. I'm sure we can drop a link in for that. And if you want to find me, I'm all over social media, Facebook, Instagram. YouTube is definitely the biggest thing that I do. So come and connect with me on YouTube. I'd love to, chuck something in the comments and we can connect. And it's always great to hear what people are doing and how you're using consoles yourselves. So go ahead and chuck stuff in the comments. We'd love to hear from that.
Awesome. I highly recommend you subscribe to Ben's channel. We'll drop a link in the description. And of course, if you're not subscribed here, what are you waiting for? Smash that subscribe button and ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.